Oh, hey friends, welcome back. Today I want to give you 3 different techniques for gluing up miters of varying sizes and skill levels. So let's go. Delicious every time. So I was gluing this box up the other day and I thought this might be a good technique to go over with you guys because miters come in all shapes and sizes. You have your small boxes that are mitered together like this, which something like blue tape or packing tape will do just fine for. But then what happens if you try to glue up a box that's bigger, like a cabinet-sized box? Blue tape won't necessarily work for that because it won't hold the heavier components together successfully. So you have to incorporate a more advanced technique. I'm going to show you how to do something like that. And then lastly, what happens if the shape is not enclosed? What if you don't have 4 corners? What if you've only got 3 corners? Or what if you only have 1 corner like a waterfall table? How do you execute that joint if you can't trap all 4 corners together like you do with the other 2 techniques? I will show you how I learned how to do that. Do remember, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but we will get to that when we get to that. Let's start first with the simplest of methods, the blue tape method. All right, so what I've got here is everything I need to do a mock-up of how I glued up this box, which is a very simple thing to execute and a great project to do as a gift for somebody or a little weekend skill builder project. One thing I do want to say before we get started is some people prefer to use packing tape over blue tape. I've used both many times. Both work beautifully. So let me show you how to do this. All I'm going to do is line up my 4 pieces along a straight edge, a stick, something of that nature. I'm going to pull a little bit of blue tape and I'm going to work from one side to the other and pulling my 2 pieces together with these 2 fingers and just lashing them together like a hinge. So I'm going to flip this over. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to run a bead of glue down at the bottom of all 3 of these. Now check this out. This is a little bit of a bonus tip. A lot of people will spread the glue. If I just press it closed, the joint spreads the glue for me. Bada bing, bada boom. Now I can come in here and I can add a little bit more glue just so that all of that glue doesn't get stolen up by the joint. All I'm gonna do is now close this up again like a book, and I need to put glue in this last joint before she closes, and then go ahead and close her up. Put my top piece down, pull down hard, and you can see I'm getting enough clamping pressure in there to get a little bit of squeeze out, which is exactly what I want. Pull down, nice and tight. And I have a closed miter. Now you can see with just a little bit of blue tape, I have 4 nicely closed miters. Everything looks clean. I've got a nice bead of squeeze out going across these corners, but that's about it. That's about the simplest way to glue up a miter you can possibly think of. Now again, the only issue with the blue tape or the packing tape is that it might not be strong enough for larger pieces. So how do you approach a cabinet-sized mitered box? Let me show you about the band clamps. Right, I've got the same setup as I did before, 4 mitered pieces. Clearly they're a little bit bigger than each of the pieces I had before. So let's get this into our square and we can talk about why it's necessary to use a different technique on a miter of this scale. There's a clear size difference between these 2 boxes. Not only is there a size difference, there's a material difference. This is made out of pine, very light, fluffy stuff, weighs next to nothing. This is made out of plywood. Not the densest material on the planet by any stretch of the imagination, but it certainly weighs more than pine, inch for inch, pound for pound. So blue tape may not hold this box together. So in order to make sure that all 4 of these miters actually close and look pretty, we're gonna use band clamps. Now a band clamp at the end of the day is nothing more than a giant rubber band. Sure, this one is made of steel and it has fancy corners on it. But all it's doing is it's putting an equal amount of pressure across the entire surface that it's clamped to, which is the same thing a rubber band does. I'm gonna drop a bit of glue in here. I'm gonna put a nice fat bead. Close it. Glue. Close it up. Tape it down. Now, you may think this is enough pressure. Like I said, it might be with this scale. You're welcome to try it. I rest my case. So that blue tape is just there to kind of lightly hold it together while I get my band clamps going. And I'm going to open these up, get them roughly in place, lock it down, and ratchet the clamps. Now, depending on how deep your box is, you may be able to just get away with one band clamp. But what I've found throughout the years is, as a general rule of thumb, if a project requires me to use band clamps, I probably need multiple band clamps. Crank it down, close those miters up, and you can see I've got 4 clean miters with nice equal pressure running around the entire box. Now, the astute YouTube viewer may have noticed this cabinet sitting behind my bench. This is one of my tool cabinets that I made a few years ago as an experiment in texture technique. This is a cabinet somewhere in the range of, I don't know, 36 by 24, we'll call it. And these miters would not have held together with blue tape. So I actually used those band clamps that you saw me use on this cabinet because I wanted this grain pattern to run as much as possible around this cabinet, because that's the whole visual feature of the cabinet. So in this particular case, band clamps became a necessity because of the aesthetic that I was going for. So that is the band clamp technique, a valuable and useful technique to have in your back pocket for those kind of mid-size miter glue-ups. But what happens again if you're doing a large-scale miter, or if you're doing, again, let's say a waterfall edge with only one miter on it? Well, friends, let me introduce you to the corner block.
So a corner block is really nothing more than a piece of wood glued onto my work surface that allows me to get perpendicular clamping pressure to my joint. So if I throw a clamp on here, I can get 90-degree clamping pressure to both of my faces to make sure that this closes up. So let's go ahead and actually glue this up so you can see how this works. What I've got here is a waterfall edge from a piece of pine that we're going to pretend is going to be like a waterfall coffee table. This is the same technique that you would use, it's just scaled down. So the first thing I'm gonna do is go back to blue tape. Guys, don't undersell the blue tape. I'm just going to throw a little bit of tape on here to help me align my corners. Now I can stand this up and close it up, and this is just gonna help me get my L brackets in here. So I'm gonna take my handy dandy L brackets and I'm gonna clamp these in here to ensure that this edge stays at 90 degrees. Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
So I've got my brackets in place and this is ready to get glued up. But one thing I want to point out real quick for the beginners amongst us, you see this relief up top here? That is to ensure that I don't glue my L bracket to my miter. So make sure you relieve the top, whether that's an angle or a round over, it doesn't matter. But I just wanted to point that out because these are the things you learn through, we'll call them negative experiences, that I want to help you avoid by doing these videos in the first place. So let's glue this up now. The glue up process is exactly the same as all the other miters. I'm gonna put some glue in here, close my joint, and then clamp it tight.
And now all I have to do is to get that, again, perpendicular clamping pressure across the joint, and I can ensure that everything closes up. You see how I'm getting that nice bead to squeeze out across the entire length of the joint? That is telling us that this joint has closed all the way at the exterior. We can check our edges to ensure that the joint has closed across the entire width. And then of course we can check out the underside to again make sure that we're getting glue across the entire surface of that miter. Now we're gonna set that aside and let that glue set up for a few minutes, but while we wait, I do want to acknowledge, as I did at the beginning of the video, that there's more than one way to skin a cat. These are not the only 3 techniques that you can use to glue up miters. These are just the 3 techniques I use most commonly in my own practice. Now you may also be asking, Eric, why did you glue those blocks to brown paper? And I'm so glad you asked. Let's take a look at it. Now the point of this brown paper is essentially to give the glue block a fault line from which it can break off. I don't want to mar the surface of my workpiece any more than I have to, and if I glue this block directly to my workpiece, there is a chance when I pop that off or try to plane it off that I could do damage to the surface. But by giving it a fault line, I get enough strength from the glue where I can clamp successfully, but it should be able to just pop right off. So I'm going to take my chisel and I'm essentially going to put it directly under my glue block, and I'm just going to give it a few taps. And just like that, I have nothing more than half the thickness of a piece of paper to remove by planing it or sanding it. Now that, as they say, is all she wrote. Friends, I hope this video was helpful for you. I hope you learned a thing or two. I'm sure you have other techniques that you employ in gluing up your miters. I would love to hear about them in the comments below. They might be things I've never heard of. They might be things that other folks in the comments have never heard of either. Let's make this a supportive community where we can all learn and grow and get better at the craft we love. So that's it for me today, friends. Until the next one,